Hey, everybody, welcome back to another fantastic edition of the His and Her Money Show. We are here to help you on your journey to freedom. We got freedom on our minds today.
Taking dominion.
We're going to be taking dominion.
That's right.
We're going to be living free.
Living free.
We're going to be living free, not monetarily today, but we're talking about our insides.
Yes.
We're talking about our mentality. We're talking about our worldview. We're talking about expectations. Mm-hmm. I didn't think expectation was a bad word until I read this book. All of a sudden, expectation turned into a bad word, but we're super excited. We have a very special guest on the line with us today. You all are familiar with him because he's done some good work all over TVs, all over movie screens, and all over bookshelves for quite a long time. So we are super excited to have none other than Devon Franklin on the show today. Welcome to the show, good sir.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Honored and blessed to be here.
We're excited to have you here with us, man, because you've been, like I said, you've been encouraging folks, not just with the work that you do, but with the work that you create as far as books. You've been trying to help us all become better people in this world. You're not just here to entertain us, but you're also here to grow us up, man. We appreciate that.
Oh, thank you so much. Hey, I'm here to do my part. That's it. That's all I'm trying to do. I ain't trying to do more than that.
So there might be two people listening right now who aren't familiar with you and the work that you've done. So for those who are being introduced to you for the very first time right here, right now, can you just say hello to everybody and let them know what you're all about?
Yo, what's up, y'all? I'm all about, living our truth, and trying to find our path in life, and living the life we're destined to live. That's what I'm about. So, I'm here to help, through the movies I produce and TV shows I produce, and the books I write, and all the avenues of entertainment that God has blessed me to be in. The goal is always the person on the other side, helping them, encouraging them to live the life that they were created to live. So that's what I'm about, and that's why I'm here.
Awesome. We're glad to have you here. You have a new book that has just hit the bookshelves, and you've written quite a few books. You're a New York Times bestseller in your own right prior to this book, and I'm sure this one is going to do similar numbers as well, because it is a great read for everybody that's tuned in. This book is called Live Free.
Yes.
Exceed Your Highest Expectations. Why'd you go this direction? I mean, this seems lofty. It seems like, is this where I need to be focused? The world is upside down right now. I've been in the house for a year. What you mean live free, Devon? What you trying to tell us here with this one?
Yeah, man, it's all about the power of setting expectations, because the world has been turned upside down. We're all navigating the unexpected. And so this book is really a manual on how to handle today. How do you get control of your expectations? How do you set the course for your life? And in the process, that's what it means by living free. When you or I are not under the mental, emotional, or physical control of anyone or anything, we live free. So even when things are not going the way we would like, how do we still find the freedom? We do that through setting expectations. And I can't think of a better time to put a book out like this than in the time that we're in. Everyone, literally everywhere you turn, every expectation of what we thought this was going to be, what this year was going to be, what industry we're going to be, what schooling was going to be, everything is being upended, and everyone's trying to figure out like, okay, this is not what I expected. And how do you deal with that? How do you deal when the unexpected happens? And that's what this book in part helps tackle. And that's why I think it's relevant right now. And that's one of the reasons why I was excited to put it out right now.
Yeah. I didn't even know that it was possible to exceed like your highest expectations. I kind of thought that was the ceiling.
You said it's our highest. How are we going to go above our highest?
Exactly. So talk about that. Talk about how our expectations are running our lives.
Yeah. In the book, I talk about expectations are the secret software running our life, meaning we aren't always reacting to the events of life themselves. We're reacting to our expectation of these events. So even when you take the pandemic for example, and obviously, our hearts go out to everyone that lost someone, during the pandemic. Outside of that, when you look at, how we have reacted, right? So like the whole even debate about wearing a mask and all that. So much of it is because we're dealing with what was unexpected. So our expectation was, hey, this is how things are supposed to be. So reality is like, hey, there's a lethal virus that is here. That's reality. Now, our expectation then colors how we handle it. Some people get mad, some people get angry, some people get, retreat. Why? Because the expectation is controlling the response. We aren't actually responding to the reality itself. And then when you apply that to people, it's like, okay, you're in a relationship, you're married. Are you really responding to your spouse or your partner, or are you responding to your expectations of them? And so if that person meets your expectations, you're happy. If that person doesn't, you're devastated. If you're looking at, okay, if your job, okay, I wanted to make a certain amount of money, be at a certain title by a certain age. Okay, I'm at that age and I don't have the money and I don't have the title. A lot of people don't know how to handle it. They're upset. Why? Because they had an expectation. Well, what happens if you take the expectation off? Then let's look at reality, right? So the whole idea for this book is that this secret software, expectations, has to be reprogrammed, because the same way the software on our phone, you can't go a week or two without another update to the software. Why? Because it's got to run optimally. And there's something new that the phone needs in order to run the way it was designed. Well, for us, we have to reprogram the software. We've got to get control of our expectations so that we take the power back in our life. And then once we do that, we then position ourselves to exceed whatever the expectation is. But first, we have to be aware of what our expectations are. And then second, we have to set those expectations, which is a process of identifying if your expectation is realistic or not. And is it spoken or not? If it's realistic, how do you know? If it's in your control. If you can control it, I argue you can expect it. The second part, if it involves someone else, you got to communicate it. Too often we have all this anxiety, frustration, anger, bitterness. Why? With somebody else, because we never actually asked them if we can expect what we're expecting. So it's about learning to know what you control and then communicating. And when we do those two things, we can set expectations. And once they're set, then we can begin to live in a way that is free.
Now, so this comes down to the management of the expectations. But for some people, for them, this is just how they are in their mind. This is their default, how they think, how they act, what they were told growing up. You mentioned that in the book, how all these things shape our expectations. But for some of us, we don't realize we got these expectations. We just think we're just doing what we're supposed to do in life. We don't say that, oh, I'm have this expectation or that expectation. And one of the core tenets of your book, the reason why we need to pay attention to this, reason why we need to all read this book, is you say that unmanaged expectations lead to an unhappy life. So
yes,
break that down for us. Help us really understand why this is something that we definitely need to pay more attention to.
Because, unmanaged, it's like, we have unmanaged expectations. It's just that, we're expecting everything. We're expecting the spouse to be great. We're expecting the job to be amazing. We're expecting ourselves to overachieve. We're expecting, if you have kids, for your kids to be this, expecting, if you're a person of faith, expecting God to do that. So all of these unmanaged expectations set us up for massive devastation, right? Because they're not set. They're not based upon an actual process that lets us know whether we should be expecting it or not. So when our expectations run wild, we find ourselves in a situation where we're perpetually disappointed and like, oh man, my job isn't what I want it to be. I'm not making the money I want. I got married, but man, this marriage ain't what I thought. I'm in this relationship. Everybody told me getting in a relationship was better than being single. Well, why am I not happy? I've been praying all my life. God still ain't answered this prayer. I've been saving. I still ain't got the money for the house. My goodness, what's wrong with me? Right? All of these unmanaged expectations set us up for devastation. And one of the reasons why I believe most people are not happy right now is because they are not really looking at their expectations and then saying, okay, do I need the expectation to begin with? Because part of the process of living free is releasing, okay, well, what would happen if I took the expectation off of myself about where I should be at a certain age? Because, by the way, where is it written that if you're not at a certain place by a certain age with a certain amount of money, that you are a failure? Did you come into the earth with a manual that said, okay, at age 30, if you don't have kids, you ain't married, you ain't making six figures, there's a problem? Well, no. So we create these arbitrary benchmarks in our life, and then we judge ourselves based on our expectations. And the reality is, if we don't meet it, we then judge ourselves incorrectly. So when I talk about unmanaged expectations in the book, I'm saying this is the area. I know you all spend a lot of time on talking about money and managing money, and that's really important. And the same sort of process that goes into managing money is one of the reasons why I wanted to write this, because you got to manage expectations. You got to manage them. The more we learn to manage expectations, to know what we can expect, to know what we shouldn't expect, and to let ourselves off the hook. Because everyone, in my experience, walks around with this guilt, this secret discontent, this secret disapproval, this secret insecurity. And a lot of it's just because of an expectation that's arbitrary. Where did it come from? Why are we, okay. So in the book, I talk about when I was, 30 years old, I was an executive for Sony Pictures, and I wanted to be vice president by 30. Okay. I turned 30 and I was not vice president. And I spent my 30th birthday upset, in despair, not mad, because I wasn't mad that they didn't give me, the promotion. I was bit down on myself because, you're nothing. And if you're not vice president by 30, man, you're not really who you think you are. Maybe you're not cut out for success. What's wrong with you? All of these crazy things. So then 6 months into my 30th year, they promote me to vice president. To my surprise, nothing in my life changed. I was doing the same job. I was working on the same projects. I was going the same places. Maybe they gave me a little bump in salary. That was it. So here I was, stressing myself out. Couldn't even enjoy my 30th birthday. Why? Because of an unmanaged and an unset expectation. This is why I wrote this book. Unmanaged expectations are robbing people of the power of the moment, robbing people of contentment, robbing people of joy now. Because so often we're focused on, I will be happy when I have the money for the house, when I pay off my credit cards, when I'm out of debt, when I've saved enough for the kids' school, when I got enough for the car. I will be happy when. The problem with that is you're making a false assumption. And I talk about this in the book. How do you know you'll be happy then? My experience, if you're not happy now, you will not be happy then. And if you are happy then, it's going to be temporary. Because whatever the then is, whatever the external thing is you're outsourcing your happiness to, it can only make you happy for a moment. Because external things are temporary in terms of our happiness, but we got to find the internal happiness. So I wrote this in the book so you can learn that the key to managing expectations and the key to happiness starts within and doing our work.
So good. Like, I think that
this is why he writes books.
Yeah,
man.
You're setting a lot of people free right now. Oh my gosh, because you're absolutely right. A lot of people, we've even heard people that when they come on our show, let's say they paid off their home or something like that. They just thought like balloons and confetti was going to fall out of the sky.
It was just like,
and thought their life was going to change. They were just like, oh, okay. And their lives didn't change. It was the exact same. Mm-hmm. I'm sure there are people that are probably saying, okay, he's talking about not setting unrealistic expectations, but what about like goal setting? You have a lot of people that are setting goals just to better their lives or to try to achieve greatness. So you're not saying to not have certain standards for your life or certain benchmarks that you want to try to, aspirations that you want to try to achieve. So talk about that. How do we set realistic expectations that will also help us get to our next or greatest, if that's a word?
Sure. So I talk about this in the book, and there's nothing wrong with goal setting as long as your goals are set based upon set expectations. So a lot of times when our expectations are not set and then we create a goal, we end up becoming someone we never were created to be, and we end up doing something we were never created to do. So, for example, I talk about in the book how, let's say, our family puts a lot of pressure on educational achievement. So let's say your family, you didn't really want to go into a certain profession, but because it's what your family kind of pressured you into, you did it. So you set the goal that I want to go into this profession. I want to make a certain amount of money and I want to live in a certain place and buy a certain home. Okay. But none of that was in your heart. So you go and do it out of sheer will, and you want to please the people that you love and that love you, and you want to make everybody happy, and you go and do it. So you set the goal and you achieve it, but you realize you're not happy. Why? Because it really wasn't your goal to begin with. Because you did it because it was what you thought everybody else wanted to make. Everybody want to make everybody else happy, and that's why I wrote this book. Because I want anybody reading this book to ask the question: what if I get into my life and I did what was expected, but not what was destined?
Mm-hmm.
Can I live with that?
The whole word.
He's a preacher too, by the way.
Can I live with that?
You all didn't know.
If I can't live with it, then I got to do something different now. I've got to make a change now. And so when you talk about goal setting, yes, set a goal that when you talk about a goal, I talk about this in the book, you got to do a joy versus pain assessment. I believe that you should be setting goals and setting expectations that bring you joy. It doesn't mean they're easy, right? Like we go to the gym and we work out. It's painful, but it's joyful because that stress in the gym produces the result that we want. So if you're in a high power profession, or you all have a dynamic podcast, there's a lot of work goes into it. So you do feel the stress of it, but there's a joy that covers it. And if it's not joyful overall, then there's no reason to do it.
Hello.
There's just no. There's no.
I got a lot of stuff off my plate because of that thing right there. Yes.
Seriously, it's like, what are we doing? It's like, no, life is too short. This life is too short. So when we talk about goals, we need goals that motivate us. We need goals that encourage us. We need goals that are based upon set expectations. We need goals that when I set an expectation, so let me give you an example. Going back to my career, I started at 18 years old as an unpaid intern for Will Smith and worked my way up ultimately to become an executive for Sony Pictures Entertainment. And I did that for, about 10 years. And, I always had the dream and the vision of being a producer, always wanted to produce. And so at 18 years old, at 22 years old, I had a business plan for my production company. Nobody wanted to fund it, right? So I had the goal of one day having the company, but I had to understand what was realistic. There's nothing wrong with the goal of one day I want to have my production company. But at times, what made that goal realistic is when I wanted to have the company. I wanted the company at 22, right? The goal was fine. But when I put it on an unset expectation, the goal became toxic because I began to judge myself because I didn't have it. I began to feel less than because I wasn't having the company. And then it's like, it makes no sense. When I look back, I'm like, I'm glad I didn't have a company at 22. I would have lost it. I didn't know what to do with the production company. It's crazy. So my whole point is that when we talk about the goal was right. But then I had to set the expectation. I had to say, you know what? This goal is right. However, the timing is out of my control. So I recognize the timing is out of the control. I keep the goal. And guess what? I ultimately got the goal. I ultimately was able to start my own production company. But it happened 18 years after I started in the business. So I had to let go of the win and just keep preparing and keep knowing and keep working and looking for confirmation along the way. So there's nothing wrong with goal setting. Nothing wrong with it. I encourage setting goals, but please do not set goals based upon things you don't control. And one of the things we don't control is timing. You all have a dynamic podcast. The thing you don't control is who listens to it and when. I don't care how hard you try, unless you put someone under duress, you cannot control when they listen to your podcast. You can't do it. But the goal of, hey, you know what? We want to get a certain amount of downloads. We want to get to a certain stature. Okay, great. Nothing wrong with that. How do we get there? I talk about this in the book. The process is the result. Control the process. Control the guests you bring on, control how well you prepare, control the conversations you facilitate, control the marketing, the publicity. That's in your control. And the more you focus on the process, the better you are positioned to achieve whatever goal you may have.
Legal & General America is a leader in low-cost, high-quality life insurance.
For nearly 70 years, Legal & General America has been providing financial protection to over 1.3 million families and businesses.
LGA makes understanding and applying for life insurance easy.
And agents are standing by to help you find the best coverage to fit your family's needs.
All you have to do is go to hisandhermoney.com/LGA to get a free quote now.
Okay, so now, Devon, you kind of glossed over. You had like a David in the Bible moment where he was anointed king one day, but he didn't sit on the throne 20 years later, right?
Yeah.
So you had this expectation 4 years into your career that you were going to have your production company, but it was another 14 after that, 4, that it actually manifested. Talk about that 14
I heard
year.
them say the word process. And
Yeah.
I think people need to focus on the process of planning for it. So yeah.
So in that window where it didn't happen, you hit 22 and it didn't happen. How do you, for lack of a better term, brush it off, stay laser focused, work harder? And it's not like it happened the next year or the year after that. We're talking about a whole nother 14. So in that moment, how are you staying content? You're not becoming discouraged. You're not giving up. Maybe I should try something else. Maybe this just isn't for me. And you kept moving until ultimately you got to the destination.
I guess.
Yeah. So, it's okay. So in that 14-year period, there were moments of discouragement and there were moments of discontent, and there were, moments of depression, and there were moments of anxiety and frustration. The thing that kept me in it came down to one word: growth. It's like, okay, I don't have the company, but I'm learning. It's like, so I had that internship for 4 years. When I graduated USC, I had my business plan for the company. And then I started as an assistant working for Will Smith's producing partner. I did that for 2 years, became a junior executive for Tracy Edmonds at her production company, did that for a year and a half, went to become a junior executive at MGM. Did that for a year and a half. MGM got sold to Sony Pictures Entertainment. And then I was at Sony Pictures Entertainment for 10 years. And then that's what gave me the ability to start the company. During that period of time, I was still growing. I was learning more about the business. I was learning more about how to make movies. I was learning more about myself. I was growing, in my relationships. I was growing in my network. I was still progressing. So that's how, and then another thing that happened was I kept getting confirmation, from people in the business that I actually had the capacity to be successful. I just at every step, even when I would get frustrated, people would be like, Devon, no, you have what it takes. Like, hang in there, hang in there, hang in there. And so because I had growth and I was expanding, that's what allowed me to endure those 14 years. It was not 14 years of complacency. It was 14 years of active growth. And once I had enough, growth to finally go for the company, what I realized is that once I started my production company, everything that I learned up until that point now is what I use to become successful. Because every lesson, knowing how to put movies together, knowing how to develop scripts, knowing how to deal with talent, knowing how to, right now I'm in New Mexico in pre-production on my next film. This is a multi-million-dollar production. I'm the only producer on the movie. Eva Longoria is directing it. But I know what to do. I know how to handle it. I know what to do because I have the experience. I'm prepared. There's nothing worse than having an experience that you're not prepared for. And so when you don't focus on the process, when we don't focus on the process and we focus only on the result, I gotta have. Okay. Sometimes God says, all right, cool, there you go. But if you don't have the process to support what you've asked for, you're gonna lose it. Period. It's just the way it goes because there's no apparatus to hold it. There's not enough integrity. There's not enough experience. There's not enough character. And so when you don't have those things to carry whatever you've been gifted, we lose it. So that's how I endured the 14 years. It wasn't without tears. It wasn't without moments of anxiety. It wasn't without moments of frustration. Yet I endured and I persisted. One, because I believe in the dream, but two, I was experiencing growth.
So I'm sure a lot of people are listening to this and they're like, I'm going to take inventory of my entire life,
yes,
all of my expectations. how do we properly take inventory? Like what areas should we be looking at, relationship and things like that? And how do we release?
You discuss 4 different quadrants that we need to be lasered in on.
And release the expectations that are no longer serving us.
Yeah, and in the book, I section the book into 4 different areas that we all need to set expectations in. 1 are personal expectations. 2 are cultural expectations. 3 are relational expectations, and 4 are professional expectations. And so this book, Live Free, when you go through the book, every section gives you tips and tools on how to set expectations in that particular area. Because, it's the same principles that then are applied a little bit differently, depending on the area of your life that you're focusing on. So in my experience, and one of the reasons why I put these principles in the book, is I don't want anyone to just mindlessly fit into these different groups, and fit into like, okay, well, I'm going to do what my family wants me to do, even though it's not what I want to do. I'm going to do what my spouse wants me to do, even though it's not in my heart. I'm, going to be on this job and be depressed, but I don't really think I can get anything better. I'm single and I'm frustrated, but I really want to be married. Well, why do you want to be married so bad? Because somebody told me, if you ain't married by a certain age, something's wrong. So I really go through these 4 sections to give the reader really in-depth tips and tools on how to appropriately and effectively set expectations in every area of your life.
Now, for some people, they're going to go through the book. They're listening to this episode, but this is not an easy process to endure because, again, we're of a certain age. And so certain things have been ingrained to us, mindsets, behaviors, habits, worldviews. And a lot of it may be based on expectations of others, and we may not be operating in an optimal way for ourselves and our passions and the things that we want to do. How do we peel those layers back really? Because it's easier to stay where you are because you're used to it. But if you really want to live free, if you really want to exceed our highest expectations, how do we overcome that difficulty that will arise as we try to walk out this process that you're giving us? And we start to bump up against some things, some areas where we're like, it's difficult to face ourselves, the decisions that we've made, the programming that we may have been a part of to get us to this position. How do we overcome that and keep moving forward in this process of getting to a place where we are living free?
Yeah. So it really comes down to one word: pain. Is the pain of, because doing the work, you're right? Doing the work that I prescribe in the book is challenging, right? But what's more challenging? What's more painful? Is it more painful to get to the end of your life filled with regret? Or is it more painful to do the hard work now and get to the end of your life with no regrets? None of us can get through life without pain. None of us. Just for whatever reason, it's just the way it's done, the way God created it. I don't know why, but that's just the way it is. So yes, it requires courage. Yes, it requires confidence. And yes, it requires getting to the place where we just get fed up. That's why I wrote the book. I was just fed up of feeling that's disappointed, feeling discontent, feeling frustrated. And the pain of those emotions was so great at times in my life that I really said, I got to do something different. I believe that there's a different life. I believe there's a more peaceful, joyful life. And that's a life that I'm still working on and pursuing, right? It's like, this work is a work we do for a lifetime. However, it's a great work because we really, when we take on the work of living free, we take the control and the power back for our life. So yes, you are absolutely 1000% right that, doing the work is hard because we got to look in the mirror, and we don't like looking in the mirror unless we taking a selfie. That's the only time we do it. Outside of that, we don't like it. We don't like to know our flaws. We don't like to look at the decisions that we've made. We don't like to look at the fact that we are the problem, and that's why I wrote this book, because I don't want anybody to just get through life never, ever living I mean, that's what it's about. It's like life is a journey. Life is supposed to be experienced. And you and I are the only ones that have the power to live that journey. And, I'm from a very, I was raised in the church. I've been Christian all my life, and being raised in the church. The crazy thing is, as I got older and started to really understand, it's like, oh, this is so interesting. The church is one of the main places that tries to control everybody. And it's like, hey, everyone, the only way that someone can get to know who God is and who Jesus is through their journey. And sometimes with some of the greatest teachers are the pain that we experience along the journey that then get us to the faith and that get us to the relationship. And so often religion and church try to control everyone's behavior. You can't do this and you can't do that. You can't do that. Guess what? I'm living free. What that means is doesn't mean I can do whatever I want. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that I have the ability to understand what the word says and then go on a journey to see how I apply that. And sometimes I might make the correct application. Sometimes I may make the incorrect application, but thank God for a loving God. That's where we got grace and mercy. Oh God, I went down here. I didn't realize I wasn't supposed to go down there. Okay. Thank you for helping me get back on the right. But I'm living. Versus sometimes what people do, especially in church communities, they don't live because they don't want the judgment. They want to present the image. Oh, we're just a good Christian family. Oh, I'm just a good Christian man. Oh, I'm just a good Christian woman. And whatever that means and whatever expectation comes with it, then everyone wants to try to be that. But then you go home and that ain't true. Because what does that mean to begin with? Outside of loving your neighbor as yourself, which the word says, the entire Bible is summed up in love your God with all your heart and love your neighbor as yourself. The thing that's messed up that we miss, the self part. Love your neighbor as yourself. One of the reasons why we don't love our neighbor, because we don't really love ourselves, because we don't set ourselves free. We keep ourselves in a prison of judgment. We keep ourselves in a prison of anxiety. We keep ourselves in a prison of negativity. We talk to ourselves worse than we would let anybody talk to us. So then we want to try to love somebody. How we offering love? We ain't offering that first love to ourselves. So I say all this because it's so important to me for anyone reading this to take on the work. It is work, but it's great work. It is painful, but it's not nearly as painful as getting to the end of your life filled with regret. And then you realize this is not a dress rehearsal. Last thing I'll say, because y'all know, you give me a question, I go on for 20 minutes.
You have the floor, sir. You have the floor.
But so speaking of, get to the end of your life. So years ago, man, my grandfather passed away over 10 years ago. He passed away around the time when the documentary, Michael Jackson's documentary, This Is It, came out. And what was so interesting is that, Michael was getting ready for his farewell tour. And he had the cameras following him, because he wanted to have footage that was for him, as he prepared for the show, having no idea that he was going to die. And in the documentary, you don't see him in the glitzy, outfits. You see him in his pajamas, mismatch, sometimes wearing shoes, sometimes not, like in a way that he probably never would have been wanted to be presented to the public. For him, he thought it was the rehearsal, but in reality, it was the show. So I preached this sermon on this documentary, and at this particular service, my grandfather, I'm from Northern California. The church that we grew up in is in East Oakland, California. My grandfather was there. My grandfather is someone who, came to faith much later in life. And long story short, he was at that service. And so at the end of this sermon, I said, hey, anyone who wants to rededicate, your life, to God, now's the time to stand up, and he stood up at the back of the church, tears filled his eyes. 2 hours later, an hour later, we went downstairs. We had our, normal, fellowship lunch that we would do after service. Lunch ends. He says goodbye. He drives down the street. We get this frantic, some of the youth frantically run to the church and say, hey, there's something wrong with Pops. We run around the corner. We get to his car, which is stopped in the middle of the street. The door is open. He's had a massive heart attack and he's dead. Why do I share this? Because this is not a rehearsal. None of us know when this is it for us. So because that's an unknown, why not live now in the fullness of our calling, doing the hard work to reprogram how we think, how we feel, how we believe? I would much rather someone endure that now than get to the end and realize it's too late at that point.
Yeah. I don't even have a question.
Yeah, we just gotta have to end it right there, because he just
he
opened up the doors of the church.
Yes. I almost went on the doors to the church,
But seriously, if you're listening right now, if you're watching right now and you heard that and it spoke to your heart, it still applies to you.
Yes.
No matter when you're watching this, no matter when you're listening to it, you're watching or listening to it at the very moment that you are supposed to. And that message that pricked your heart was a rhema word for you. So although this is a podcast, this is still a God moment. And you still have the opportunity to say, God, I hear you. And yes, I want to rededicate. Yes, I want to get back on track. I want to get back on the path that you carved out for me. I'm sorry that I strayed. Now, please help me get back on the right path. So this may be not a church service that you're in right now, but God doesn't need a building to speak to your heart. So if you heard from him, answer the call. So, Devon, you have encouraged us all that we need your new book, Live Free. So tell everybody what they will find in it and where they can get it, because it's out right now.
Yeah, listen, they will find, I believe, the knowledge they need right now. They will find, the tips and the tools and the stories to encourage them and to help them along their journey. And they will find that there's a better way. They'll find hope and help through this book. And, you can find the book everywhere. You can go to my website. I got all the retailers on my website. My website is devonfranklin.com. And, you can go to all the retailers. We got it, through Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Books A Million, and a bunch of local retailers as well. You can get the audio book version that I recorded myself. That is hard. I'm telling you right now, recording an audio book, shoot, Lord have mercy. That is no joke, man. 4 days in a booth and you can't miss a word. So when you listen to that audio book, there's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears put in that audio. It's available on Audible and everywhere books are sold. Live Free is available.
Awesome. And people, you've been giving out not just the book, but you give out game on social media as well. So let everybody know on the different platforms, your handles, and how they can connect with you there. Thank you. Yeah, I'm on Instagram and Twitter at Devon Franklin, DE_VON Franklin. I'm also on Facebook at Devon Franklin Official. Awesome. There it is, ladies and gentlemen.
Links in the description.
We'll have everything linked up in the description box. The book is called Live Free. The author is Devon Franklin. And yes, you need this in your life. We all need to have this assessment because, like he said, what's the point of getting to the end of the show and not realizing that you missed the show? All right, Devon, we can't say thank you enough. We appreciate you coming and sharing this wisdom and really encouraging everybody, including us, through the message that you are conveying. So we just want to wish you continued success, and we appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to come and rock with us today.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. God bless you both.